you want this? I want this.
I want this. So remember, chapter 2 is actually split into 2 parts. Tomorrow when you take your test, you'll notice it's a little bit shorter than usual. It's only on 2:1 through 2:4. So you might feel like your one-pager feels a little bit shorter too. That's great. Because we need that to make sure you have all the information.
Today, test is tomorrow. You're studying today.
So I'm not going to go through the whole big one-pager thing because we did that last time. But we're just going to remind ourselves a little bit of its purpose. So who can tell me why we do a one-pager in this class specifically? What?
Stuff in our notes that way. If we want to look at his notes, then we don't have to look at all the pages.
Good. So one of the really big reasons is convenience. You have a lot of notes. There's a lot of stuff there. There might be something you really want to remember, like right up front, and you can put it on that one pager so you don't have to dig through all your notes. Why else do we do a one pager, Jenna? To take all those things we learned and to summarize and organize them. And I'm going to add one thing to that and remind you that this is your chance to make it your own. So if we taught it in a way that didn't quite make sense to you, but your neighbor explained it to you in another way, then the one page is the place for you to kind of add those little like notes to self.
For example, 2-4. Those notes were crazy. So if there was an example in the practice that made more sense to you, that you were like, oh, I get this now, maybe write down that example or color code it how you need to.
Or write it in another language, or use something like pictures or examples, whatever you want to do to make it relevant to you. Okay? All right, remember, you can choose to organize yours however you want. We have a lot of words this time, so consider that as you're making your one-pager. You might want to divide it into sections by like 2:1, 2:2, 2:3, or you might want to say kind of like vocabulary and put all the vocabulary together. You decide how you want to organize it, but this is going to go right at the end of your interactive notebook. You will not rip it out. You'll leave it right at the end of chapter 2. Part 1, so right after 2:4.
Okay. And because there's so many words, I didn't check this by Miss Sider, but I'm just going to go for it. If this one is like really the only one in geometry that this would make sense to type it out, if you'd rather type it out on like a Google slide and then you want us to print it for you, we can print it in color. If you want to try and color code things, you can. So normally with math, it's really hard to do things on a Google slide because you have so many equations or you need to show your work on things. This is a good one that if you want to type it to color code things, you could. Or if you just have really big handwriting and you want to try and condense it so it doesn't take up so much space, you could do that. Okay? And then we'll print it out for you and we'll glue it into your notebook, but you have to tell us that you want us to print it out for you. Otherwise, we aren't going to just randomly print random things. Right?
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Miss Ryder?
Yeah, that sounds really
Okay.
fun. So here is our must-haves, and we'll put this back. We'll leave this up while you're working today. Is it about this right now, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we making another one pager?
Yeah.
At the end of this is how we review. It's how you study.
So we have a lot of vocabulary. These not filled in circles are kind of under those bigger headings. So for example, when we talked about and or statements, we also talked about negation. That kind of goes together. When we talked about conditional statements, we also talked about a hypothesis, a conclusion, the inverse, the converse, the contrapositive, okay? The big concepts or kind of the big questions you would need is, how do you know the truth value of an and or statement? Remember, that was 2-2 where we had those two columns. And if you have this, then this. Or if you have this, then this. Make sure you know that for your test. Make sure you know how to determine the truth value of an if-then statement. So when we use that converse, inverse, contrapositive. And make sure you know how to determine if a conclusion is valid or invalid. That's from yesterday. Okay, so that was kind of the real tricky one that a lot of us got hung up on. So spend some time for sure making sure you understand yesterday's lesson. Again, your one pager will be out of 10 points. So So you'll get 4 points for those vocabulary words, 4 points for those big concepts, 2 points for it being neat and finished before you take the test tomorrow for 10 points total.
Okay, so make a one pager before every test.
We do, typically, yep. So any questions before we give you the rest of the time today to kind of get started?
I'll go back to the last slide.
Put that one up. Okay, so you have the whole time today to do your one pager and to do any extra practice work. I would say start on that one pager because it's worth 10 points and your test is tomorrow whether you're done with your homework or not. So I get that one pager worked out and then go back and do any missing assignments.
So these are things we want to see on your one pager. We do not want your one pager to look just like this. Okay? If you just write down all these words, is that going to help you on your test?
Maybe.
No, just to write down by conditional?
Yeah.
No. Alright, so we want you to like show how you understand them in your own way. So do not just copy this. Do it in your own way, do your own organization. Remember, you can do like boxes, you can do a circle and then spread out. You can do like a web.
You've got highlighters, you've got colored pencils, we'll stop talking. Okay, go.